question that hits close to home. Do you have an opposite-sex best friend that your partner always seems a little uneasy about? Have you ever fallen just a little for you're just a friend? Do you believe that a man and a woman can truly share a deep, meaningful friendship without ever crossing the line? These are just fun questions for a late-night chat. They touch something deeper, something many of us carry quietly. Because if we're honest, most of us have had a connection with someone of the opposite sex that didn't quite fit into any box. It wasn't love. It wasn't nothing. It was something. Maybe it started out as a simple friendship. You joked, you talked about life, you shared secrets. There was a comfort there, a rhythm like you had known each other forever. And then, somewhere along the way, something shifted, a lingering look. A moment that felt like more. A tiny crack in the wall labeled just friends. But because it didn't go anywhere, because no one said anything, it stayed in that in-between space. A gray area full of unsaid words, hidden questions, and emotional tension. And the strangest part? It felt easier to leave it unresolved than to risk losing the friendship by confronting the truth. That's what makes these relationships so emotionally complex. They're full of what-ifs, full of invisible strings that tug at our hearts, even when we pretend they're not there. Yes, opposite-sex friendships can be real. Despite the emotional mess-ups they can bring, let's be clear about one thing. True opposite-sex friendships are real and incredibly valuable. Some of the most genuine, long-lasting friendships are between men and women who have learned to deeply respect one another, not because they're pretending not to feel something, but because they've built a bond rooted in authenticity, not attraction. These friendships often come with a different kind of emotional safety. There's less posturing, less competition. Conversations can feel more open. Advice feels more grounded. You get to see how the other side of the emotional world thinks, and sometimes it helps you better understand yourself too. An opposite-sex best friend might be the one who helps you decode your confusing relationship patterns, tell you the hard truths your same-gender friends avoid, defends you when you're not around and calls you out when you need it. And the beauty of these friendships is that they can outlast romantic relationships. When people change partners, move cities, or go through personal storms, these cross-gender friendships often remain a steady anchor, silent but strong. But here's where we need to stay honest. Just because something is real doesn't mean it's always easy. Even in the most sincere opposite-sex friendships, there can still be moments of emotional confusion. Moments when you wonder, what? Moments when other people project their own insecurities onto your bond. Moments when your friendship becomes a target of jealousy, suspicion, or even resentment. These tensions don't invalidate the friendship, but they do challenge it. And for an opposite-sex friendship to truly last, both people have to be willing to check in with themselves and each other to make sure that what they're building is grounded in truth, not denial. The gray area no one talks about? When friendship and love intersect, the gray area we don't want to name. There are relationships that don't start with love. They simply meet at the right time, on the right frequency, with the right feelings. They share silly stories, laugh together at midnight, comfort each other after a breakup, send messages at 2 a.m. when anxiety strikes. It's all very natural. No strings attached, no calculations. Just safety and understanding that quietly grows over time. And then, in the midst of that pure friendship, something begins to change. It's not a clear vibration. It's not a dramatic love or a cinematic confession. It's the warm feeling when the other person remembers you eat on time. It's a hug that lasts longer than usual. It's a gaze that lingers longer after late-night conversations. It's the silence where no one says anything, but everything seems different. Emotions don't always stay in the box we try to keep. Sometimes, in the midst of such closeness, one person begins to feel a little more. A little longing, a little jealousy when the other person mentions someone new. A little disappointment when they see them drifting away. A little hope, though never expressed. And the other person, maybe they feel the same way. Or not. Maybe they have also wondered, asked the same questions as you, but then folded it away, letting everything continue as before. No one dares to touch something vague, for fear that if they name it, everything will break. Then time passes. Maybe one person starts a new relationship, and things gradually change. The conversations don't last long. The confidences become less frequent. One person quietly withdraws. The other person still smiles, still says, "Congratulations for you," but deep inside there is a scratch. And then there are no arguments, no major events. It's just a slow, silent distance between two people who used to be so close. No one is wrong, but neither has the courage to say it all. That's the tragedy of relationships in the gray area. Not quite friends, not quite lovers. They fall apart not because of betrayal, but because of silence. Not because of no longer loving, but because no one dares to admit that they are lost in their own feelings. And the biggest question always remains, after all, are we holding on to our friendship, or are we hiding something bigger? Just because we're afraid that if we say it, everything will change forever? Because sometimes to keep something simple, we make everything more complicated than ever. 3 very different types of opposite-sex bonds. Not every bond between a man and a woman is the same, and that matters more than you think. From a distance, it can be easy to assume. 2 people spend a lot of time together. They laugh at inside jokes. They show up for each other during hard times, and the outside world immediately places them into a box. Best friends, siblings in spirit, or they're totally in love but just don't realize it yet. But human connection is rarely that simple, because beneath the surface of every close bond between a man and a woman lies a different kind of emotional frequency, one that can't always be categorized at a glance. What we see is often shaped by assumptions, projections, and what we've been taught about how men and women should relate to each other. What we feel, that's where the truth lives. Some connections are purely platonic. They're rooted in mutual respect, emotional safety, and a shared rhythm that doesn't ask for anything more. These friendships are rare and beautiful. They bring comfort, clarity, and often a kind of loyalty that runs deeper than many romantic relationships. But even here, there can be moments, brief, fleeting, where one wonders, is this all it is? And that question, even when unspoken, can echo loudly. Other connections carry a sibling-like dynamic, the teasing, the protective instincts, the way you can fight and still come back to each other like nothing happened. It's a bond built on years of shared history, of being woven into each other's lives in a way that feels almost familial. There's love here, deep and abiding, but not the kind that makes your heart race. It's the kind that says, you're my person, but not my partner. And then there's the gray zone, the space where emotional intimacy tiptoes into romantic territory, where you share everything, thoughts, fears, dreams, but never say what's really on your heart, where your connection feels like more than friendship, but no one dares to name it, where glances linger a second too long and goodbyes feel heavier than they should. In this space, tension builds quietly, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that sits in your chest, growing heavier with every unsaid word. You laugh like best friends, but your heart beats differently when they touch your shoulder. You celebrate their milestones, but something inside you flinches when they mention someone else. You both act normal, because admitting it might change everything. And that's the thing no one tells you. The hardest part of these bonds isn't the confusion about what they feel. It's the confusion about what you feel, and whether you're brave enough to face it. Because recognizing where your relationship truly stands means you might have to risk it. Risk disrupting the comfort of the connection. Risk hearing an answer you don't want. Risk admitting to yourself that maybe, just maybe, you've wanted more all along. But there's power in that clarity. There's freedom in truth, even if it leads to distance, even if it ends the illusion. So let's look deeper at these bonds, not to label them, not to fit them neatly into categories, but to understand what's really there, beneath the laughter, beneath the loyalty, beneath the silence, Because until you do, you'll always wonder, is this connection giving me life or keeping me stuck? 1. The true platonic friendship. No secrets. No suppressed feelings, no blurred lines. In this kind of relationship, both people know exactly what the connection is. A genuine platonic friendship, you're close, but not too close. You talk about life, relationships, dreams, failures, all without any emotional tension beneath the surface. There's no jealousy when the other person starts dating. No lingering eye contact. No what if moments. In fact, you often become each other's biggest supporters in love. You might help them write their dating profile, give advice when they're unsure about someone, or even attend their wedding without a single ounce of pain in your chest. It's not that you can't be emotionally intimate, you can. It's just that your connection is rooted in trust, understanding, and respect. Not desire, not hidden longing. These friendships can last a lifetime. They survive distance, marriage, and change. Because they're not built on unspoken hope, they're built on clarity. But the truth? They're rare. Because keeping a relationship this clean, this balanced, often requires both people to be completely self-aware, honest, and emotionally disciplined. 2. The friend zone connection. Unspoken love. Quiet pain. In this dynamic, one person has feelings. The other doesn't, and usually neither wants to talk about it for very different reasons. The one who's in love clings to the idea of friendship because it's better than nothing. They don't want to lose the connection, so they stay. They show up. They support. They hope. But beneath the surface, there's a quiet ache. It shows up in the way they hesitate before asking if you're seeing someone new. In the way they're always available when you need them, but never ask for much in return. In this way, they sometimes disappear when you fall in love with someone else, and then quietly come back when you're single again. To the other person, it might feel like friendship. To the one holding the torch, it feels like a slow heartbreak. Over and over again, the friend zone isn't just about rejection. It's about imbalance, emotional labor being given by one, while the other remains comfortably unaware or unwilling to address the truth. And worst of all, the pain is often disguised as loyalty. 3. The almost lovers. More than friends, but never quite lovers. This is the relationship that haunts people. There's chemistry, undeniable, electric. There's emotional intimacy, deep, sometimes deeper than any relationship you've had. There's history, shared memories, inside jokes, years of knowing each other. Everyone around you thinks you're perfect for each other. Maybe even you do. But something always stops it. Bad timing, fear of ruining the friendship, other relationships, the uncertainty of whether they feel the same. You might go years pretending it's just friendship, but your heart knows better. You feel it when they touch your hand and your chest tightens. You feel it when they cry and your instinct is to hold them a little longer than you should. You feel it when you imagine a life with them, but push it away because now isn't the time. Sometimes the moment never comes. Sometimes it does. And it's too late. They marry someone else. You move away. Life gets in the way. But the feelings? They don't fully leave. They linger in old photos, in songs you both loved, in the ache of missed chances. The almost lover bond is both beautiful and brutal. Because you shared something real, just never out loud. Why knowing the difference matters? It's not about putting labels on people. It's about putting clarity on feelings, yours and theirs. Because not knowing where you stand in a relationship can lead to confusion, miscommunication, and pain. You might be calling something just friendship when it's really emotional dependence. You might be holding on to hope when the other person moved on long ago. You might be hurting someone without realizing it, or hurting yourself by refusing to face what you really feel. Understanding what kind of bond you have allows you to do something powerful. Choose. Choose honesty. Choose boundaries. Choose whether to keep holding on or finally let go. Because the only thing more painful than unspoken love is staying stuck in a relationship that never had the courage to be real. when to reevaluate the relationship. It's easy to say we're just friends, but here are some warning signs that you need to look deeper. You feel uncomfortable when they date someone new. You avoid being fully honest with your partner about how close you really are. You feel possessive of them more than a friend should. You secretly hope they'll see you one day. You've imagined a version of your life where you end up together. If any of these sound familiar, it's time to stop hiding behind the word friendship and ask yourself what's really going on. Yes, opposite-sex friendship is possible, but rare. So where do we land? Yes, opposite-sex friendship is possible. Yes, it can be beautiful, honest, and free of tension, but only if both people are truly honest with themselves and with each other. It requires emotional maturity. It requires clarity about boundaries. And it requires both people to be okay with the fact that not everything has to turn into love. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do is stay just friends. Other times, the most honest thing you can do is admit that you don't want to be just friends. Final thought, what about you? Maybe they were more than just a friend. Maybe you still talk to them from time to time, sending each other memes, checking in on birthdays, joking like old times, but with a quiet space between every message. Maybe you drifted apart not because of a fight, but because life slowly pulled you in different directions, new relationships, new cities, new routines. And the thread that once held your friendship together, it loosened gently, almost imperceptibly. But you felt it. Maybe they got married. You smiled in the photos, clapped at the right moments, even raised a glass at the reception. But somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, "It could have been us." You never said anything, of course. You told yourself you were being dramatic. You were just friends, right? But even years later, their name still makes something flutter in your chest. Not because you still want them, but because some part of your heart never figured out exactly what they were to you. Friend? Almost? Could have been? We don't always get closure in these kinds of relationships. There's rarely a clean ending. No final argument, no dramatic bye-bye. Just a slow fading out, like the credits rolling on a movie that never had a climax. But time has a way of demanding honesty from us. At some point, we all reach a moment where we ask ourselves the real question, not the polite version we tell other people, but the one we only whisper when we're alone. Was it really just friendship? Or was it something deeper wrapped in the comfort of being safe? Because the truth is, sometimes we call it friendship to protect ourselves, to avoid complicating what feels good, to avoid rejection, to avoid hurting someone else, to avoid admitting that we cared more than we were ready to say. And maybe that's okay. Maybe not every relationship is meant to be labeled or explained. Maybe some people are meant to pass through our lives as mysteries unresolved, but unforgettable. But if you're still wondering, if you're still carrying the echo of that friendship in your heart, then maybe the lesson isn't to regret what never happened. Maybe it's this. Next time, don't be afraid to ask the hard question a little sooner, even if the answer is messy, even if the friendship changes, even if it hurts. Because real honesty always hurts less than a lifetime of what ifs. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.